Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so we just got done with round 9 of the U.S. Chess Championships. And this game that I'm going to show you right now is taken from round 9. And it is against Wesley So with the white pieces and Jeffery Xiong of the black pieces. Uh, Now, Wesley So was actually leading the U.S. Championships, and Jeffery Xiong is right behind him on his heels, tied for second place. And so, basically the two favorites by this point are going head to head in this round 9 of the U.S. Chess Championships. So if you guys are ready to go, I'm ready to go. Let's hit it. Let's see what we have here. All right, cool. So we have E4. We have C5. So we have the Sicilian defense. This is just a touch. Bam. All right. Knight to F3. Knight to C6. All right, D4. So we have the open Sicilian. All right, C takes D4. Knight takes D4. Knight to F6. Knight to C3. And like I said before, guys, there's so many different possibilities. There's a Najdorf. There's dragons. There's just typical open. Let's see, there's E5s. Even you might see a B6. It's rare, but that's definitely something you can see. So there's, a lot of different possibilities in these positions here. Of course, a lot of the ones I mentioned are very well known. People like saying Najdorf and dragons and, all different kinds of, interesting sounding variations and things. All right, so we have E5. All right, we have knight D to B5. Like I said, you always want to make sure you're saying the right knight when you're doing your notation, so you make sure you got the right knight when you're doing your analysis later. All right, so we have D6, bishop to G5. Trying to resolve the tension on that knight, so we go A6, knocking the knight back to A3. B5, just continuing the attack, trying to see if we can't get a fork. A fork going on with those two knights sitting down there right next to each other, separated by a fire. Knight to D5. So we have the Sicilian Pelikan, Chelyabinsk, also known as the Sveshnikov. People like saying that too, Sveshnikov, right? All right, so bishop to E7. Bishop takes F6. Now in this position, you also see, knight takes E7. That's another common move. Those are going to be the two major moves that you see. Bishop takes F6 and knight takes E7. Sorry. All right, bishop takes F6. Another possibility is taking with the G pawn. It's not as bad as it seems with taking with the G pawn, damaging the structure a little bit. C3, like I said before, you always want to keep as many squares as possible away from your opponent. So C3 does exactly that. Kind of blunts this knight a little bit. All right, so bishop to G5. Knight back to C2, very common move in these positions here. Rook to B8. A3, just stopping any type of expansion. Now, naturally, as you have two pawns over here on the queen side, and you have 3 pawns for white, what you're going to be trying to accomplish is a type of minority attack. Usually when you have 2 pawns on one side against 3 pawns, you try to push it to kind of damage the structure a little bit, and that's just called a minority attack. All right, so we have king side castles for black. H4. Bishop back to H6, and we have G4. So Wesley So is like, I'm not having no crap. I'm about to trap your bishop and beat up an entire piece, and I'm just gonna super win. That's how we think it. That's how we think it looks like. But sometimes it's a super loss. So we'll see what it ends up looking like in this game here. So we have bishop to F4, and so we have queen to F3. So just kind of, that bishop doesn't have a lot of spaces to go to. Sorry, I did my eyelash and my eyes kind of killing me here. Okay. All right, we're good. All right. So the bishop's been running out of room here, and so now it's double attacked, and so there's not a lot of options as far as black is concerned. So we have bishop to B7. Now this is actually a novelty in the position. This exact position has never been seen before. It's not in the database. So it is a brand new position that we're in. You know, you normally see like an A5 or even bishop to E6. Those are the two moves that are in the database as far as this exact position goes. Just kind of, you know, trying to put a little counter attack, you know, bishop here, putting a little counter attack on this knight, or just trying to expand, like I said, that minority attack on the queen side there. All right, so we have G5, taking F6 square away from the queen, rook to E8. All right, knight takes F4, pawn takes F4. Okay. All right, and we have castles here. Now, something interesting I want you to note here is if we just back up just a touch, some of you might be looking and saying like, man, wait a minute, the F4 pawn is just kind of free, right? Well, not quite. Let's go ahead and take a look at, you know, just kind of an alternate variation other than castles, right? And the thing I want you to make sure that you're remembering is the fact that your king is dead set in the center of the position. It's stuck in the center of the board, and you have this nasty looking rook right here, just kind of bearing down on this whole file here, right? So let's say, for example, say, hey man, I'm gonna win a pawn. I'm gonna just be all the way good, right? Cool, win the pawn, bam. There's actually multiple things you can do with the knight. You know, of course, you can move the knight here, move the knight here, move the knight down here, move the knight down here, up here. You know, it's not my bad, not up. Just don't disregard that one. Knights don't move in straight up movements. But one of the strongest moves you can do in this position is going to be this here, moving this knight here to this square here. Now, I mean, you definitely have a problem as black, or as white. I'm sorry. So you have a fork possibility coming up here, and then you also have the immediate threat of rook takes E4 check. Now, you know, of course, you know, you got your queen right here, right? So if you get checked on this square here, that queen is in some trouble. You can also just kind of be cheeky and, you know, take bishop here. And so you're seeing there's a real problem with your king still being in the center of the board. Even though it kind of looks like, you know, black is giving away a knight right here. It's not going to look very good because, you know, usually people don't have any problems with giving up, you know, 2 whole pieces of material to win a queen. Usually it's worth it. So we just back up here, touch here. And we have, like I said, we have castles. All right, B4. And so, you know, Xiong just says, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and just bust the position open. I'm gonna sack a pawn. I'm gonna open your king up. You know, we have all the pieces developed completely for black. So in this particular position, black's doing pretty well. You know, white has an undefended queen on F3. The bishop has not been developed. So he's kind of behind maybe a move or two, as far as trying to get himself into you know, a better position. All right, so we have A takes B4. We have a knight sack on B4. Interesting. So Wesley So says, I'm gonna go ahead and just take that. I'm gonna hook that sacrifice up. See what you got here. And so we have bishop to E4. Bishop takes E4. And so, like I said just previously, you know, we kind of have a little bit of problems in this position. You know, the queen, like I said before, is undefended on F3. This bishop has not been developed anywhere. And this rook is undefended in the corner. And so Jeffery Xiong is taking full advantage of all of these problems that white has. You know, because like I said, they were a move or two back in development, you know, a little bit behind. So now queen goes ahead and takes the pawn on F4. And we have rook takes B4 for black. Now I want to back up just a touch because there is a very strong continuation, a very serious threat that I believe Jeffery Xiong missed. Surely this came to mind, but he must have calculated that rook takes B4 was stronger. And it's this move here. Queen to A5. Now, see, the major problems that you have right here as far as when Queen A5 is played is the fact that this queen is going to be coming down here. And, you know, it's just threatening too much. You know, if you have, let's say, for example, you do something trying to free, you have this move here, queen down here, and then, you know, this pawn is falling. And then, you know, you either have to move here or move here. Either way, you can have anything like, you know, the queen taken. You can also have the bishop moving. And, you know, there's not really anywhere this king can go now. And so, unfortunately, you have to throw the queen in the way. And that's the only thing. But then you have rook takes. So, like I said, that queen a5 move, I think that it might should have, you know, he might should have had a little bit more consideration for that specific move because it looked deadly strong. All right, so we have, like I said, we have rook takes b4, bishop d3. Realizing that, you know, we're going to have to lose the exchange in this position. Just like I showed you guys in the last game, you know, sometimes you're put in such a position where, you know, losing the exchange is inevitable. So now we have bishop takes h1, queen takes b4, bishop back, trying to tickle this rook real quick. We have rook to d2, push pawn. So there's no little, you know, discovery situations going on in the center of the board. So bishop takes h6, or bishop takes a6, sorry. And so we have h6, g takes h6. You know, we're getting a little, you know, intermezzo, Zwitsch and Zug move. I'm always talking about them Zwitsch and Zug moves. You notice it's really heavy at this level of play. You know, they're very good at being able to find those little side in between moves and not directly taking back every single time. All right, so we have queen to c5, rook takes h4, and so we're trying to trade these queens down. So queen takes c8, bishop takes c8, rook takes h6, bishop to b7, attacking this under-defended pawn here on d5, seeing if we can't just have two completely connected passed pawns on this queen side. Rook to h5, b4. All right, so I want you to go ahead and stop right here real quick and just take a look at the position and kind of, you know, do your assessment of the position. Now, there are going to be some people who are going to look at the position and say, okay, well, I mean, everything's like super even. I have 3 pawns, they have 3 pawns. I got a rook, they got a bishop. You know, I got a rook and a bishop, they have a rook and a bishop. So, you know, you're kind of looking like everything looks pretty equal, right? Well, the thing I want you to notice in this particular position, even though all of that is true, is what types of pawns we have for each side. Now, initially, you know, you're going to look at more in the center of the board. So it's like, okay, black has an isolated pawn on d5. White has an isolated pawn on f2. But the most important thing I want you to take a look at is the fact that we have a completely passed pawn. And it's an outside passed pawn. You know, we talk about passed pawns. And, you know, passed pawns in the middle of the board can be pretty good. But when you have an outside passed pawn, usually that becomes a situation where it's too much for the king to handle. And so, like I said, white has an outside passed pawn. And black has a pawn that's kind of outside, but it's not passed because when it comes down the board, it's going to come in contact with this pawn here. And so this pawn has the ability a little bit to restrict the movement of the other pawns a little bit more than black's has the ability to restrict the movements over here on the queen side. So slight, you know, a slight advantage to white in this particular position just because of that. And so, you know, as you play more, you get, you know, on different levels and stuff like that. You know, instead of just looking at a position for just simply just the piece count, you're going to be able to look at the position and calculate it a little bit better, you know, based on, you know, individual factors that are present, you know, in each different position. And so every position is not just going to be general. All right, so we have king to f8. Trying to get the king into the action. Like I said before, you know, when you get into endgames, you want to move the kings as much into the action as possible. They're really huge in helping you, you know, try to win the game and stuff. King to b2. All right, so we have rook to f5, king to b3, king to e7, king to a4. All right, so we have g5 trying to, you know, get us a passed pawn over here on the king side. And we have b5. Now, like I mentioned just a little bit ago, you know, the huge strength in the position for white is its passed pawn on b4. It was on b4. And so there's a saying in chess, passed pawns must be pushed. And now you see how the movements of the king coming up is assisting this pawn and trying to get to the, you know, the promised land, right? And so you're seeing kind of what I was talking about a minute ago, coming to fruition right here. It's a little bit hard for black to push their pawn on the king side, but it's very easy for white to push their pawn on the queen side. And a lot of end games come down to pawn races and stuff like that. So, all right, so we have rook to f4 check. King moves up. It basically just helps the king do what it was going to try to do anyway, is move the king up. All right, so we have king to d6. We have b6. So we're going all in trying to get this pawn. We're only two squares away now, so pretty close. All right, so we have rook to c4, attacking that under defended pawn on c3. All right, so we're defending it with rook to d3. All right, so we have rook to c5 check. King to b4, trying to make sure we protect this square here, because it's we're gonna drop our pawn if we move anywhere else. All right, so we have rook to c4 check, king down to b3. All right, we have rook over to f4, and then we have c4. Exploiting the fact that we have this pin here on the d file, and so you can't take, ideally, of course, you want to take with check and win the rook, but because of the rook's position for white, that's not going to happen. All right, so we're unpinning ourselves with king to c5, and so we create another pass pawn. And so, like I said before, you're seeing what black is doing on the king side compared to what white is doing. White is creating all kinds of havoc on this side of the board. And so there was a definite difference. Even though it looked visually the same, there's a definite difference in the quality of the pawns for white and the quality of pawns for black. Because if you notice, black hasn't really moved their pawns much on that side now. All right, so we have rook to b4 check, king to c3. And so we're snapping that pawn off the board on b6. But because we already have a pass pawn and it has the rook behind it, like I mentioned before, guys, in some previous videos, anytime you have a pass pawn, you want to always try to put your rook behind that pass pawn. That makes it as strong as possible on its way to go to the edge of the board. And usually pieces have to sacrifice themselves to make sure that you can't do that. All right, so we have d6. And so if you notice with this move, we're discovering an attack on the bishop on f3. And so, that has to be resolved. And so the only way we can really do that is by taking the bishop on b7. All right, so we have d7. And so, like I said before, just a second ago, black is in a really, in a really bad position right here. He's going to have to sacrifice this rook for this pawn because, it has the rook behind it, and it's only one square away from, reaching its final destination. And we can't have that. So the rook has to be sacrificed. So we have rook takes d7, and we have rook takes d7 for white. F5. Trying to get something rolling over here with these pawns, but like I said before, this pawn right here is a really good preventer of these pawns and stuff over here. And then plus now you have a rook. And so, you have kind of, even though you're down a pawn, you have some overwhelming, material in this position. So, all right, so we're getting the king over. Like I said, get the king over and, assist as much as possible. So we have king to d3. All right, so we have bishop to e4, king to e3. All right, and so we have g4, and the king is just perfectly nestled in that square here on f4. Being able to keep those pawns at bay and, in conjunction with the other pawn, which is on a dark square, note that. And so this bishop has no influence on this pawn being on f2. All right, so we have king to c6, trying to attack the rook a little bit. So we move the rook over to f7. All right, so we have king to d6, and we have rook takes f5. And it is in this position that Jeffery Xiong resigned. And I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a little bit of, some variations and stuff as to why Jeffery Xiong resigned. Because it just kind of looks like maybe to some of you guys that he's just giving up his rook for no reason. It's like, why would you give a rook up? You're up, just be up, right? All right, so in this position, you're going to have to take this rook with the bishop, right? So you're going to take the king here. And so, you have a couple of different options as far as black is concerned, how you want to proceed. You can move down and try to shadow the king. and then we'll take the pawn here. And then you have a couple of options after this. I mean, you can move here, but then there's this here. And you keep in mind that this pawn has the ability to still move 2 squares on its first move. And so this is just a completely winning king and pawn endgame. So if we just back up a touch. Alright. And so let's say that instead of going down, let's say we're like, okay, I'm just going to try to go up to try to block, right? Cool. All right, so we have king takes g4. And so the most logical 2 moves are going to be either to move your king down here or king down here. So let's just explore both of those. All right, so the king goes here. And then in king and pawn endgames, where you have the king 2 squares in front of the pawn, because it's back that far, it's below the 5th rank. This is just a completely 100% one endgame. You always have the ability to, what we call outflank the king, go on either side, basically, whatever side the king chooses, go to the other side, outflank that way. And you also have a reserve tempo with the pawn behind here in case you do need to waste a move and give it to black. So we back up a touch, and let's say the king moves down here. Well, that's basically like, an outflanking type of maneuver that you can do here. So, of course, if the king goes down here, we basically just have the position we had before. And if the king goes up here, then you have this move as well. And if you guys remember from just a couple of moves ago, this is basically the same exact position, just up a rank. And so now you actually have 2 reserve tempos as white. All right, and so that is the game from round 9 for the 2 leaders of the U.S. Championships, and Wesley Xiong is in beautiful form. He's just kind of killing everything, man. And so if you guys have any like suggestions that you'd like for me to do, any games you'd like for me to cover, any little things you want me to try to do just to make the the videos I make a little bit more exciting, or I'm kind of trying like a little comedy when I first get on, just like a little something individual I can be doing and stuff like that. But go ahead and leave a comment, let me know. Go ahead and subscribe, guys. I'm trying to get to my 1,000 subscribers here. You guys have been watching the heck out of my videos, and I really appreciate it. Hopefully you guys are enjoying what I'm offering you guys and stuff like that. And, it's entertaining you guys, which is what YouTube is all about. So I will see you guys in these next couple rounds here. So we still got round 10 and round 11, and I appreciate you stopping by, guys. See you.